Hi, I'm Renee Burgess, and I'm going to be discussing gestational diabetes and how it can become type 2 diabetes. First, let's start out by talking about the etiology, implications, and the impacts of gestational diabetes and type 2 diabetes. Now, gestational diabetes is caused by a pancreatic beta cell dysfunction and the placental hormone lactogen that increases the insulin resistance in gestational diabetes. What does this mean? This means that the lactogen hormone is causing your body not to recognize when your pancreas is producing the insulin and releasing it. Your body's not reacting to it. Now, with type 2 diabetes, you're going to have a dual defect. You're going to also have that insulin resistance, but you can also have insulin secretion, meaning that your pancreas is not creating the insulin for your body to secrete. Now, causes that can take place have a few risk factors. Now, one of the biggest things that doctors are going to talk about when you're pregnant and on that risk factor of being a person with gestational diabetes is they're going to be looking at your body mass index. Now, of course, women do not like to always talk about weight, but when pregnant, this is one of the things that you want to really focus on. Now, other risk factors can be a family history of diabetes and decreased physical activity. If you're like me, I like to park close. I don't like to walk far. And especially if I'm pregnant, I definitely don't want to. So just not having as much physical activity can be a risk factor. Now, who's affected? All pregnant women. However, there are certain risk factors that can cause a certain demographic to have be highly affected. So we're going to look at things like ethnicity and race, prior gestational diabetes, previous high birth weight. So if you've had a larger baby in the past, that was actually putting you at a risk for having the gestational diabetes. Now, when we talk about implications, we cannot not talk about the complications that go along with it. So let's look at some of those complications. We're going to look at the fetal complications and we're going to look at maternal complications. So when it comes to some of the fetal complications, we have macrosomia, which is basically just having a big baby. The baby's birth weight is over a certain amount. Usually it's about 9 pounds, and I think over that 9 pound 15 mark. So once you get to having a 10-pound baby, they're looking at calling it that. You also have neonatal hypoglycemia, which is basically the baby being born with a low glucose level. Polycythemia is when the baby has too many red blood cells. And then you have shoulder dystocia, which is basically when a baby is coming through the birthing canal and their shoulders get stuck in the pelvic bone. That happens quite often. A lot of times the doctor has to say, well, we may need to do a C-section, especially if they feel ahead of time that they may have this type of complication. Then you also have hyperbilirubinemia, which is basically jaundice. If you've ever had a baby born with jaundice, they put them on a blue UV ray light to kind of get their bilirubin levels back normal. And that's what it is. It's high bilirubin levels. Then you have neonatal respiratory distress syndrome when they're having issues with breathing after birth. You have increased perinatal mortability, meaning the baby is probably born and delivered but does not survive. Or sometimes the baby could, that whole pregnancy, you're getting that heartbeat, and then right up until it, something can happen and cause that baby to no longer have a heartbeat. And then you have hypocalcemia, which is just the baby having low calcium in the bones. Now, when it comes to maternal, of course, there's a lot more than this, but these are some of the main ones that the mother can deal with when it comes to gestational diabetes, which is the hypertension, the preeclampsia, increased risk of developing diabetes while pregnant, and increased risk of having that cesarean section. So, I talked about, if you have that shoulder dystocia, you could end up having the C-section. but this also goes hand in hand. If you are given a diagnosis of having the gestational diabetes, you can more than likely have a cesarean section. All right, now, what is the impact of a health navigator? A health navigator can impact the client in a very, very positive way. Just by the client knowing that they have someone available to help and understand, improves the consistency of them staying into care. That linkage to care is very important, because if you are not in communication with the client, they could fall out of care. They could stop going to their appointments. They could stop caring if anything is going on with the baby. Anything can happen. And then also, as a health navigator, providing the client with services available to them to implement a healthy eating lifestyle. We just talked about how, they're looking at your weight. So you want to make sure that you ensure that if for whatever reason that client gets into having gestational diabetes, that they're getting the diabetic education courses, that the insurance is going to cover it. If not, we're going to find ways to help them out. And then make sure that they are aware of any free services that are available to them. Now, the biggest resource that a health navigator can provide to a client is going to be linking them to things like the WIC program. Now, although the WIC program is not a medical program, it is a program that is designed to help you have healthy choices of eating, not only while you're pregnant, but after pregnancy as well. I'm very, very knowledgeable of the WIC program. My mother worked with WIC for 15 and a half years before she retired. And this is a program where I have seen mothers come in and they may have not had resources available to them outside of that program. They maybe didn't have a partner. They're the only provider in the household. So a lot of the monies that they were receiving from working is going to bills, is going to other things. And they were not having enough food in the household. So the WIC program actually provides those essential things. You got cereal for the babies and yourself, milk, eggs, cheese, literally things that they would tell us to go and get in the moment of a disaster or hurricane or whatever. So this is a program that is very important, and one that I feel is a big resource to mothers, especially when we're talking about their health and making sure they are not getting into having gestational diabetes. And if they are, this is something that can help them deal with it along the way. Now, here is a statistic. About 50% of women with gestational diabetes go on to have type 2 diabetes. Let me say that again. 50% of women with gestational diabetes will go on to develop type 2 diabetes. Hello, I am one of those 50% of women. I had type 2. I had gestational diabetes while I was pregnant in 2003, almost 20 years ago. And about 2 years afterwards, my gestational diabetes became borderline diabetes to eventually becoming me being a full type 2 diabetic. So yeah, I'm one of those 50%. Now, diabetes education is very important. Now, how do we get the information to those who need it? Let's talk about that. First things first, take the test and take the class. This is very important. When a pregnant mother is diagnosed with gestational diabetes, the first step is to ensure they are enrolled in a diabetic education course. This gives them the basic information on what diabetes is and how we can treat it. This will also show them that they are not alone. Sometimes when people get a new diagnosis, whether it's something as simple as diabetes or as major as cancer, most times people assume that they are alone. They're in this fight alone. So to be able to see other people taking a class, getting this information, it is showing them that they're not alone. So how does a pregnant mother know if she's at risk of having gestational diabetes? Well, the mother's given a 1-hour glucose test. In this tolerance test, they're going to drink and ingest a very, very sugary filled drink. It is non-carbonated and it is straight syrup. This is going to be given in, typically they do it at your OBGYN office, and they have you sit there and you drink it. You have to drink it within so many minutes. And then step 2 is you have to wait. You have to sit there for an hour and wait. And once your glucose is checked, you'll know if you might have gestational diabetes or not. Now, if you have gestational diabetes, that is when everything we discussed prior to this is going to take place. The education is going to take place. They're going to get you in the classes. We're going to make sure you understand everything. But then, of course, if you're not, then your pregnancy continues as normal. Now, staying in the know. Stay in the know is basically saying that there are places that you can get information about diabetes. Don't feel like, oh, my doctor didn't tell me this, so I didn't know. And that is true. Everybody does not readily have internet access available to them. So it is quite understandable if someone does not know where they can go to get certain information. But I can tell you, one of the best places that you can go and get information about diabetes, whether it's type 1 diabetes, type 2, gestational, you can go to the American Diabetes Association's website, and you're going to get information. They're going to have a section that says what's new. They're going to have a section talking about nutrition tips. I saw a fitness section on there. Also, upcoming events. Maybe there's going to be a virtual training or a virtual learning experience that you can be a part of. They're going to have that available to you. Now, when it comes to laws and things, a lot of people always ask, well, what if this happens or what if that happens? And I'm a diabetic. So each state has different laws and legislative things put in place that are there to assist individuals with diabetes. One of the examples that I can tell you about is going to be my driver's license. I'm in the state of Florida, and because I am a diabetic who is insulin dependent, I am able to have on my driver's license because, say I have an accident one day and it's not because I'm drunk or, whatever, having road rage. Maybe it's because I'm having a medical emergency. Maybe my blood glucose got so high that it caused me to have an emergency, or too low and it caused me to have an emergency. When they access my driving information, it is going to tell them, hey, she is insulin dependent. So they are going to also get kickstarted into the mode of, hey, let's check her. Let's get medic in here. Let's check her. So that is something that is available. Most states allow you on your driver's license to have listed on there in big red letters, insulin dependent. And then also here in the state of Florida, they have made it easier for our children, because if you don't know, we do have a lot of juvenile diabetics and they have to do insulin and take medications at school. So there's a legislation law put in place that they have to make sure they have someone in the school, whether they are a licensed medical professional or not, that they're able to assist kids who are diabetics to be able to receive the care while they're at school. Now, moving forward, we have to make sure that gestational diabetes education is done expeditiously and accurately. We have to, because a lot of people go through life not even knowing that they're diabetic. They're feeling tired. They're feeling exhausted. They're feeling confused. And the issue could be that they are experiencing diabetic symptoms and they don't know it. This is a pregnant mother who's thinking, oh, these symptoms are just, I'm pregnant. I'm just tired. Oh, I'm going to the bathroom a lot because I'm tired. When it could be they're going to the bathroom a lot because they're having issues with gestational diabetes. And then we want to make sure that resources and educational courses are readily available to be accessed with no issue. If the information has to be a free resource, we want to have a free resources. If it's going to be one, say, for example, you have students who are earning educational credits or things like that, maybe it is where they have to pay for it, but it is there available for them any event they want to access or be privy to that information. And then also we want to make sure that new developments and advancements are communicated to the public as soon as possible. Like once we get a breakthrough, hey, there's a new diabetic medication. Hey, there's this new this. Hey, whatever it is, we want to make sure that if there's any breaking news in the diabetic community, that we get this information to the public as soon as possible. And we don't want to wait. I want to thank you so much for watching this presentation. I hope that you were able to learn something and take something away from this. Being someone who is a diabetic, this is something that is very, very close to me because I did start with gestational diabetes. It went to type 2 diabetes, and all of these resources and all of this information assisted me. My now almost 20-year-old daughter was potentially a baby who could have had macrosomia. She was one of those babies, had they not had her delivered 2 weeks prior to her original due date, she would have been over 10 pounds. And she actually was born with having the low blood sugar. So she had the neonatal hypoglycemia when she was born. Her blood sugar was low. And so that is something that I have the firsthand experience on. And I hope that my personal experience and the information I was able to research for you was resourceful. Thank you for watching, and until next time.